delighted to be here with you today and to speak and have a conversation with my panel who are going to talk to us around policy and how climate, energy, circular economy, research policy all will contribute to Ireland's sustainable future. And what we really want to talk about, because the topic is so broad, what we really want to talk about is just the opportunities that exist within the existing policy frameworks and how they can help Irish companies, existing Irish companies, take advantage of sustainability, or companies, or if you have an idea and you're an entrepreneur and you want some new ideas, what those new ideas might be. And I suppose from a personal perspective, I've always considered sustainability as an opportunity. That's I suppose, the rationale behind my company, Sustainability Works. With my founders, Laura Hewson and Karen Dignan, we just believe sustainability is a business opportunity. And what we are seeing more and more when we're talking and working with companies is the whole idea of climate risk. So, companies are beginning to talk about climate risk, but the inverse of that is opportunity. So that's what we really want to talk about today. And when we think about policy, it is very multifaceted. So everyone on this panel today has a very unique role within the policy system, and it's very hard to kind of pigeonhole everyone into that unique role. But we have policy, policy is represented in terms of research, in terms of informing policy, in terms of enterprise policy. So we're going to try and extract information from everyone on the panel today as much as we possibly can. But policy, first and foremost, is an enabler. So, it's not, I suppose, the role of policy alone to make a sustainable future happen. It will enable a sustainable future. So it's about how all of us can work together. And I know all of these ladies have fantastic experience in this topic and in this area. And I know none of them want their long bios read out, so I'm going to do very quick introductions. So we have to my left, I have to remember now which is my right and left, Laura Burke, who is the Director General of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. We've Lisa Higgins, who is the Head of Challenge and Research, Education and Public Engagement at Science Foundation Ireland. We have Rowena Dwyer, who is heading up a new department in Enterprise Ireland on sustainability, climate and agtech in Enterprise Ireland. So a lot to do in that new role in that department. And we've Mary Donnelly, who is chair of the Climate Change Council. So you're all very welcome here to the panel today, ladies. And we've heard from all of the speakers, they've all had a very kind of interesting and perspective from their organizations and their experiences with sustainability. And one of the themes that kind of came up this morning, Mark Foley mentioned it, one is, there are still barriers and policy barriers there. We're not going to be able to address any of those barriers really in this conversation, but it is an interesting point. But one of the other barriers that was mentioned was by the panel, the industry panel, who talked about language being a barrier. And Mary, when we think about climate and energy policy, it is complex. It is something that, if you're not immersed in it, it can be quite daunting to kind of read the Climate Action Plan or the nationally determined contributions and figure out, well, what's in this for me as a business? But you're somebody who's immersed in policy, from your European Commission days to what you're doing now with the Climate Change Council. So when you look at those policies, do you see opportunities in those for business?
Thanks very much, Aideen. Lovely to be here this afternoon. And the answer to that is yes. I think it's a very exciting time. We're on a journey that's going to give us all a much better life.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have warm, comfortable homes, we hope. We're going to have clean air, clean water. We're going to have quiet urban spaces. It's going to be so much better. But the journey to get there, of course, is one that is presenting a number of challenges, but also opportunities. And one of the things, and I do empathise with businesses in this sense, in this space, there is so much paper.
Yes.
Just take the Climate Action Plan. More than 600 actions. I'm not going to ask how many people have actually gone from page 1 to page N of the Climate Action Plan to see what are the opportunities there. And that's just the Irish climate action plan.
Yeah.
You combine that with effectively the equivalent in all of the other member states of the European Union, because remember, we're part of the single market, and trying to distill from that what are the commercial opportunities is more than a daunting challenge. But just let me pick a few. And these are kind of headline targets. At the moment, as we know in Ireland, we're talking about installing 500,000 heat pumps between now and 2030. In Europe, we will install 50 million heat pumps between now and 2030. That's a market growth of 16% per year. I defy anybody to give me another market with a government-backed growth rate of 16% a year, every year for the next 10 years. And it'll go beyond that because it's not going to be finished at that stage. Wind, we've been talking about wind and the rollout of wind and what the resources that we have here. Today in Europe, we have about 120 gigawatts of wind power. The target for 2050 is to treble that at a rate of between 20 and 30 gigawatts a year. Let me put that into perspective. We have, ourselves in Scotland, we have the best wind resource in Europe, par excellence. Today in Ireland, we have about 4 gigawatts, give or take. Our target for 2030 is to double that 4 to 8 for onshore wind and add 5 for offshore wind. So we're talking about trebling our wind investment and rollout in this country over the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And just as a final one, maybe just to mention is solar, which we've only recently discovered in policy terms, but we now know we can roll out solar in Ireland. Across the European Union, we're looking at having 600 gigawatts of solar power by 2030. 600 gigawatts. This is huge. How are we going to do it? We're going to put solar panels on every single roof in Europe. It's in the Repower Europe paper. This is coming down the track. I think Ireland should move faster. Why don't we change our building regulations now? Why do we have inert roofs when we could have roofs that can generate power? So these are just a few headlines. I mean, these are, these are there in the documents. Yeah. You can see them. You can see the market size. You can see the growth of the market. They're government-backed. You know that there's going to have to be grants and other incentives to make this happen in order to achieve the targets. So we mightn't be in the business of producing a wind turbine per se, but there's a lot of component parts to a wind turbine. And we do produce those. Yes. There's a lot of component services around using wind turbines, and we can produce those. And there are logistics around it, and we can benefit out of that. So I think the policy in this domain is very, very commercial. It's very, very clear. It's been documented. There is a huge market out there, a huge opportunity, and it's available to everybody here in Ireland, but of course across the EU. However, I would agree that part of the policy, in addition to doing the targets and setting that out, is to ensure that the policy removes obstacles and facilitates the opportunity of achieving that market opportunity that has been set out in the papers.
Thanks, Mary. And building on that, Laura, when Mary is talking about, I suppose, industries, wind, solar, the energy sector, still lots to do, clearly, but still relatively mature in an Irish context. In the work you've done with the EPA, you're looking at circular economy and how that is an opportunity for businesses, and because that is a whole new growth area as well for Ireland. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I suppose we've been doing this for many years, and Ireland had a national waste prevention programme back in 2004 when nobody in Europe had it. It's now changed to be a circular economy programme, but it's the same concept. So we've been funding enterprises, and we like to say we were green before it was cool, and now everybody wants to be green. And back to the previous conversation of all businesses now need to be sustainable. But just to give you an example of the type of supports we've given, and then I can talk about our most recent programme, is it's simple, innovative ideas. So there is a large supermarket chain that sends all of their plastic packaging, we heard this morning it's a big issue about getting recycling of plastic packaging, to a small company who then innovate. They then change that plastic packaging into plant pots which go back to the supermarket and are sold. Like, to me, that's a great circular economy idea. There's another, two companies we've supported where there's excess bread out of a bakery who've linked up with a brewery, and that bread is used as a supplementary material in brewing. So for many years, we've been trying to get existing businesses to trial and to demonstrate new and innovative ideas and activities as part of their business. And we give them financial support, because sometimes you need that bit of incentive, you need that bit of drive when you're going to your board to say, we want to do this, but we're getting some money from the EPA to do it. It is always a good selling point. So that's the program we're running. We've run for many years. We're actually launching the 2022 program tomorrow. We've €650,000. We grant awards between 50k or up to 50k and 100k for businesses to be looking at kind of how can you make your business more circular economy. And it's really the start of that process. And, you know, it was just when we were talking about energy and wind turbines. In fact, there was also another business that we supported, like, again, at early stage thinking about making components for wind turbines out of recycled plastic. So there's, look, it's two sides of the same coin, challenge and opportunity. But if you're in the mindset of opportunity, it's there. So our program is launching tomorrow. The closing date is in July. There is even a seminar to support companies, and it's really aimed at SMEs. So if you're interested, be going onto the EPA website, and we really, really would welcome all of your ideas and like to support them.
Brilliant. Thanks, Laura. And I certainly know lots of companies that are planning to submit applications already, because I suppose the thing with circular economy is it's about thinking about a product or service or a material and trying to question how can you retain the value of that material for as long as you possibly can, because I suppose for too long we've just thought about everything being very disposable. And if we still want this same nice quality and lifestyle that we have to really extract the maximum value from materials. And going back to you quickly, Mary, in terms of I suppose more on the innovation side, when you were talking about policy and the examples you gave were in the established sectors, but when you're thinking, and maybe in your kind of remit and what you see at a global level even, are you seeing some breakthrough innovations and some ideas for blue sky thinking that we should all be thinking about here?
Yes, indeed. One of the things I really enjoyed when I was working in Brussels was the Horizon 2020 research program, because the ideas people came with and the research that they were doing was just fascinating. But I also follow, for example, the Bloomberg pioneers, and just to give you one or two examples of the kinds of things that they highlight. So a company in the US called Pivot Bio, using nitrogen-fixing microbes to replace artificial nitrogen from fertilizers. And they're finding it to be extremely successful. So, a total replacement of artificial nitrogen there. Company in Sweden, Salt X, using nano-coated salt as an interseasonal heat storage facility, which is, game changer if we can get it to really work as we go forward. Whitricity in California, wireless power charging for our cars. No plugs, I'm sorry. It's the future, but then I wouldn't limit it to electric vehicles.
Yeah.
We should be thinking wireless power chargers even in the building. I'm sure you, like me, get so totally fed up when you look behind the TV and you have a cable for the television and you have a cable for something else and a cable for the Wi-Fi, and it's just a mess. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice not to have those? So wireless power transfer is really an out-of-the-box one coming down the track. And then another one that I think is really interesting is built-in PV. We think about PV panels on the roofs of our houses. It's a retrofit, in actual fact. Why are we putting up roofs day one that don't have PV built in? And indeed, Saint-Gobain in France is developing glass with built-in PV. So imagine that we're able to produce in our building from the actual elements of the building enough power to run our building.
Yeah.
Both the generation from the built-in PV and then the wireless power transfer within the house. So these are some of the very off-the-wall kind of ideas that are being discussed and indeed being worked on. in a global sense.
So we have the global, that impression from a global, but Lisa, you're working on all of this at an Irish level as well through challenge-based innovation. So
Sure, yeah.
do you want to talk a little bit about what your team is doing at Science Foundation
Yeah.
Ireland and how that can inform businesses?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Thanks, Aiding, and thanks. It's just been such an inspiring day so far. I think just so many of the messages that are coming through, I think we all share what the needs there. So for people who don't know Science Foundation Ireland, we fund research and innovation in third level in research performing organisations. And obviously many in the room do know we have major investments in large research centres looking at renewables, looking in the agricultural space, advanced materials, and these are all absolutely critical that we fund in basic, the most fundamental research right up to applied research, to have that strong base in Ireland in order to enable innovation. But what I really want to talk about today, I suppose, is a little bit of a departure in a way that we've been going in the whole area of challenge-based funding. And this is additive. This is building on that strong base that I referenced, and it's very much, I suppose, in keeping with this global shift to mission-oriented approaches, mission-oriented research and policy. So the approaches that we've been taking is we are working very much with teams, looking to get them to address societal challenges, societal problems. So we don't just fund research projects and sit back and wait and see what's going to happen. Right from the very, very start, we're asking those teams, interdisciplinary teams, which I can talk a little bit more about the structure, but we're asking them to really identify those problems and to validate those problems. We're taking a very flexible approach because as they validate the problems that they're working on, they may need to change. Obviously, that's very much in keeping with the literacy of those of you working in the whole startup space. So in conducting this challenge-based funding, we're very invested in the teams that we're funding, and we de-risk as we go along through the process and give additional funding to those teams that make the most amount of progress. And I suppose the very exciting thing is that in the coming weeks, we're going to be in a position where, this has been called out in the new research and innovation strategy, that we have backing now at a governmental level to really scale up these activities. So under the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, we have an additional 65 million euros that we're going to invest. And the majority of that is in the whole area of green transition, but also digital transformation. So it's really exciting. It's a big ask to the research community and to others to engage. So this is very much about bringing everybody into the fold. I can talk more about that, but I suppose just to talk a little bit about what we've done to date, because we're building on this. This investment has come off the back of experimentation that we've been taking ourselves in new approaches. So just to give you a couple of examples, we ran a zero emissions challenge. And after a number of stages, brought teams through that. So the team that got to the most progressed level, and I don't like to say the team that won, because I think everybody who participates in these programs benefits considerably from the process. But those that went the most progressed was a group led by Professor Kevin O'Connor in UCD, working with Carberry. And really, it's just so fantastic to see. So this particular group is looking at a kind of a zero emissions dairy farm, but working very much in close collaboration with the farming community, with Carberry, and now they're working on this demonstrator farm down in Cork, down in Shinnock. One other example that I'd like to highlight, and I could go on and I won't, but one other example that I'd like to highlight is another group also actually working UCD, and they're looking at the whole area of lithium cobalt battery recycling and the challenges that come with that. And the reason I want to highlight it is, these are chemists who are bringing their fantastic technology to the fore, but actually this project is co-funded by Irish Aid. And what that has brought is, obviously, there's very considerable ethical issues around cobalt mining, and I suppose bringing that knowledge and understanding of the impact of what's actually happening, maybe in some cases in the background, is really important. So for SFI, this opportunity for us to work across government is really what we're trying to do. And if I could just give one other example,
for it.
and I don't know if Mark Mallet is still here, but I thought his talk was so inspirational earlier. And when Mark was in his previous role at the helm of the Defence Forces, he spoke a lot to SFI about really we need to be doing more with technology, with getting the research community working closer with government. And we've brought that to fruition now, and we have a great partnership going with the Defence Forces. And in that case, we have researchers working hand in glove in teams with individuals in the Defence Forces, and that's really what it's about, that real true collaboration. So we hope to replicate that across many other government departments and other areas so that we can have that kind of true engagement to get the most value.
And that's over at lunch when we were chatting. I think that is one of the things that, you know, came through in the conversation. I know you were talking with other people from the public sector or the semi-state sector, and it is about that need to collaborate and to have conversations, because it all starts with the conversation. But there are lots of conversations to have. And I suppose, Rowena, just building on what Lisa has said and what Mary and Laura has said is, and what we've heard earlier, is that, you know, every business, sustainability is everybody's business. So when you think about that, and Mark, I think, has left it to you to explain what Enterprise Ireland does and explain the programs that you have. But in your new department and team, you are actually helping companies realise that, whether it's on the opportunity side or if they're an established business. So do you want to talk, maybe explain a little bit about the programs that you have in place and trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a million, Aideen. And yeah, to thank you for the opportunity to be part of the discussion here today. Yeah, no, if I were to pick up from what Mark was saying in his presentation, we have in our most recent strategy, for the first time, we have a pillar on sustainability. Maybe about time, but really, I suppose, recognising the fact that sustainability is actually an enterprise development imperative at this point. Whether it is, and there are, as you said, there's the two sides to it. So for companies across all sectors, actually transforming their sustainability performance so that they are in the game in 10 years' time, that they are competitive, that they are meeting their customers' needs. That's one area that we are focused on. And then the other side, because you could kind of get swept away by the fact that, oh, this is something companies have to do, was actually the realization that, well, what is it we actually do as an enterprise development agency? We support companies to realise opportunities that exist. And this transition is exactly as you said, Mary, like there are markets that are literally being created by the changes in policy and the targets that are being set, and getting our companies to realise that those are real opportunities, that you know, there are new end markets that didn't exist before, or growing end markets that didn't exist before. And what is it that they are doing currently in terms of their products or services that they can either build upon, pivot, or just frankly sell into a new market that they didn't before. So I'm just going to talk for 2 minutes on the green opportunity side. I think we might come back to the sustainability transformation piece a little bit later. But two examples of where policy is driving opportunities for our companies and what we are doing with them. You know, the challenges of the agriculture sector. There isn't anyone sitting in the room here who doesn't know about those, and how that sector can actually improve its and decarbonise and improve its emissions profile. Who's going to be able to help them to do that? Think about our ag tech sector, and that's one area that we have said our ag tech companies, more and more what their service and product offering is around is actually. It always has been about improving efficiency anyway, but now you're actually saying you're improving the efficiency of the primary agriculture sector to actually help it to decarbonise. And so we're working with ag tech companies, whether it's just supporting them for research and innovation, supporting them on product development, maybe looking at markets, their sales and marketing, or their strategy or their financial functions, and using all of the programs that actually exist in Enterprise Ireland already, our R&D components, our leadership training programs, and working directly and individually with companies in the ag tech sector to develop better products, services, solutions to the agriculture sector to hopefully, and really, I mean, I think there's no one sitting here who doesn't say that, like, the challenge of innovation and finding technological solutions to our kind of decarbonisation journey is just huge. So it's actually working with established companies and startup companies and getting them to think about what we can do as an agency to make them stronger, better, bigger, and to actually supply and into these new end markets and deliver solutions to other sectors. One other sector that is just, almost on a daily basis, you realise what an end market opportunity it is probably our offshore wind sector. And I have colleagues in Enterprise Ireland who, for a number of years now, and it's really kind of coming to the boil, have been working with companies across. And I suppose this is probably the key piece for enterprises to think about. You may not actually start out as being, I am a sustainability company or a company developing sustainability solutions. If you take something like the offshore wind sector, and Mary has already referred to it, we have companies in our offshore network who are telecommunications companies, digital technologies companies, engineering companies. They have been working and supplying different markets up until now, other markets up until now. And again, utilising our overseas networks teams, utilising what the companies themselves are telling us, we are supporting companies to actually see these new market opportunities and to supply into them. So the really interesting thing about this, and I thought about it as I was kind of driving down today, was what's Enterprise Ireland doing around green opportunities? It should be sticking to the knitting. I mean, whether it's supporting our startups, whether it's supporting research, our overseas networks, but getting companies to actually identify what the new opportunities are and those new end markets and bringing them closer to it.
And I think that's one of the things you and I had discussed was around horizon scanning. That is a big part of what you're doing. And I imagine there's lots of opportunity to collaborate with Science Foundation Ireland on the challenge-based programs as well, because it's when those conversations will shed light on what those opportunities are.
Yeah, I mean, just to come in on that, Aiding, I mean, it's just critically important, that we need to do better at joining up the dots, and it's very much kind of what it is about. But what we are seeing already with the challenge-based funding approach that we're doing is because we're working so closely with the teams, we are seeing them going on. We're speaking with Enterprise Ireland. We're seeing teams going on and getting additional funding as they move out of that pre-commercial space, but also looking to Europe and European Innovation Council, and there's been great success there as well.
Which is fantastic. And I think that's the point. There isn't a shortage of funding if you have the right ideas and are getting the right supports and are being nurtured in the right direction, which is what Accelerate Green is about as well. And one of the things we heard this morning as well was Mark Foley's speech. He used the word leadership. And I suppose, Laura, that is one of the things we need to see from the public sector. And I know with the work you're doing as well within the EPA, you can talk to that and where you guys are going to show some leadership in terms of procurement.
Well, I think green public procurement, it's another one of these things that has been talked about for a long time, but never really materialised. But we really are now at a tipping point, and it's great to see that by the end of 2023, there is a commitment under the Office of Government Procurement that all tenders will include green public procurement. And when you think about it, now depending on what stat you want to look at, but it's between 17 billion and 20 billion that's spent in Ireland every year on procurement. There's a real role for the public sector to be leading by example. There's no point us saying to everybody else, you should be doing X, Y, and Z and not be doing it ourselves. So there's that opportunity. The EPA has produced guidance for public sector bodies when they're going out to tender, because it is kind of this different type of way of doing things. And rather than everybody trying to do their own thing, we've produced a wide range of guidance. And this is everything from, catering services to ICT to lighting, you name it. As I said, very, very different types of tenders that will be going out. So we've produced that guidance, but more importantly, we now have a role in reporting on green public procurement. So you're kind of saying there's a commitment there. Now, how are we doing? And the first report the EPA did, we've just published quite recently, again, it's up on our website, was for government departments. So we kind of started there, and it was for 2020. And to be frank about it, it was really disappointing. It was just really poor.
Okay.
But, because challenge, opportunity, look at the bright side, that's just the baseline. And so what we're saying is, okay, that's where we're at now, or the government departments are at. Okay, we need to improve from here. So we've been engaging, we've been giving guidance, support, training to government departments and to other agencies to drive green public procurement. So, we're starting at a low base, but I think really its time is now, and we have to show that leadership. So every single one of us as organisations need to be showing that leadership, and we're just at the start.
And I imagine within that, Laura, there's going to be an effort to, I suppose, upskill people on green public procurement, because I guess that's has been one of the barriers to uptake.
I think I'm sure it's that nervousness, because when you talk about procurement, sometimes people's eyes glaze over, or there's this terror of I'll do something wrong.
Yeah.
So that's partly the reason, the guidance, and also the training. And training, so that people can learn from each other. So as part of this training, it's bringing in people from different organisations together, so they're learning from each other and can give examples.
Yeah.
We did this. So we're all kind of back to we're all in it together kind of mode. So, I really think that it's just the starting point, and we've seen it ourselves, and it's even simple things like canteen services. You kind of go, oh, well, it's green public procurement isn't for that.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Are the canteen services you're procuring, do they have the ISO 14001? Are they, do they have, proper environmental management systems themselves? So and once you do it, it gets into the psyche. So I think, I said, we're just at a real tipping point. And I think it's a really exciting one, because that also means that the companies that are bidding for the public sector contracts, it puts them in a great place around thinking about being innovative, developing new products themselves, but also bidding in for different types of projects, not only in an Irish level, but also at a European level as well.
No, I think it is exciting, and it's going to kind of be a step change for the companies supplying in, which is always great. And I know, Rowena, part of your work as well is working kind of with all the other kind of enterprise sectors to get them to think the same direction and to show leadership in the space. So it's through the Green Start Green Plus program, which has been around for maybe, is it 2 years really at this stage, something like that? Are you starting to see trends in sectors that are more advanced in their thinking around sustainability?
Yeah, no, and Aidan, thanks for leading into that one, because I suppose that is the other side of where we're focused. And as you say, it's been around for a number of years, this piece around, companies and transforming their sustainability performance, and what does that mean? And Laura has given a great example of what practically it could mean. I mean, at its most basic, I think David said it just a few minutes ago, I think for every company, so their business will have to be sustainable, okay? So it'll have to be part of their business strategy. And we have a range of supports for companies at, different sizes, different needs as well, because obviously, your climate impact is different depending on what type of company you are. And we have offers from kind of vouchers to Green Start to Green Plus, which are build your way all the way up from kind of an initial resource efficiency look at your business, all the way through to, really developing and being supported to develop really in-depth sustainability roadmaps for your long-term investment needs and what you need to do to change as a company. In terms of your question around where are we seeing companies who are really availing of it and so on, what I would say, and I'd say a lot of people here would understand this, is that engagement, there's a level of awareness by companies, gosh, we need to do something here. The level of engagement is still limited enough. Okay. And again, that's why do you step in with, publicly, with public supports? It's because to try and help companies to actually take that step in And so the sectors that we've seen who are engaged in this, most predominantly are the ones you would probably expect, the ones for whom probably the regulatory issue is clearest in their mind. So food, construction, engineering, packaging, okay, they have been our earliest adopters. We're beginning to see services companies, and what we're beginning to see as well is that it's changing not just from kind of that, energy management, resource efficiency, but also things now like, let's say, the broader life cycle assessment of and maybe their supply chain. So a services company might have itself a really, really small direct carbon footprint, a small footprint, but actually what they will need to do to win public contracts, to get investment from investors, they will actually have to demonstrate their sustainability credentials throughout their whole business model.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we're going to see greater demand. And again, I suppose that's actually, to go back to loop it around again, that's where there are going to be opportunities for companies, for Irish companies, to actually provide the expertise and support to other companies to develop these plans, to catalogue correctly to measure, to monitor, to verify where they are, what their sustainability credentials are, and to just, I suppose, de-risk and demystify it and have it that companies know more than they build in ERP systems and so on, that these type of reporting systems will become something that companies will have as part of their overall operating systems, and that'll put them in a position, whatever sector they're in, to win business, to grow into the future.
Brilliant, Rowena. We see that in our day-to-day work. It's just that there are so many companies out there wanting help, wanting support. They generally still don't know the why. You still have to explain very simply what sustainability means. And I know we had that conversation this morning, but the number of times that Laura and I have to explain sustainability is 3 pillars. It's environment, it's social. We don't always use the word profit. We might say prosperity instead. It sounds a bit, sometimes a little bit nicer, but there are more and more companies coming through. I'm quickly going to go to you, Lisa. Just, we heard a little bit about people earlier and how important people and talent are. And I know that's something that you focus on within your work and in putting together those teams. Do you want to just maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a couple of things, and I suppose as well, following on from Rowena, just about the people, about helping and supporting and mentoring, and it's very much part and parcel with what we're doing and taking this approach. Very much invested in the people, but I suppose just to lean a little bit on some of the comments there around regulatory issues, and I mean, Ireland is very small, and I mean, in the global context, and really, I think, at a government level, we have that opportunity, I suppose, to open doors for people and to give access. So, for example, in the whole food space or whatever, we would say to researchers who are working in that space, it's never too early to have the full information, to engage. So, we put up contacts with the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, get individuals actually mentoring individual teams so that they're going in the right direction. And I think this is all about the kind of added things that you can do that are over and above funding. And I think what we've found is actually a lot of the time that's really what's really being looked for. And that in many cases we'll have kind of well-funded groups, maybe, in some cases coming to us, but actually what they really want to do is kind of understand the whole spectrum from end to end, understand the additional skills that they need, and it's not as trivial as maybe it might sound to get that information or to know where to go. So I suppose that's what we're also trying to do there at an early stage.
Because sometimes if we're deep subject matter experts,
Exactly,
it's hard to have those conversations because you don't know where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that kind of interdisciplinarity is so important, and intersectoral, but you have to bring people together, and you have to also, I suppose it does help to put structures in place to enable that.
And I'm smiling because Mary and Laura were talking about the climate action plan at lunch, and they were mentioning numbers, and even I was struggling to go, where does that go in the climate action plan? So even though we're in this space and we're familiar with it, we can sometimes, it can be a struggle just to keep up and understand where everything sits. And I suppose that is a thing for businesses, to kind of just pause and go, you're not on your own in this. There's always somebody who can answer the question. And just to close, because I think we are over on time, but I might just ask you, Mary, just when you think about in your role in chairing the Climate Change Council, when you're, and again from your experience at a European level, is there kind of one area that we should look at, or is there something that in the new climate action plan, is there some area to focus on or something we can do better in that might be an opportunity for business?
Well, one suggestion we would make is that the 600 actions, and maybe the next time it's 700, I don't know, is that we codify the actions. So identify what are the big bang, impactful actions. Let's identify those clearly so we know what they are and focus our attention on that. And also, let's put a timeline on actions. Sometimes an action might have a very small impact, but if we can do it in 6 months, well, let's get it done. Let's get the easy ones, the quick ones, let's get them all done. But let's then focus our attention on the big bang, impactful actions and track those. So, layer the action plan so that it makes it a little bit easier to read, but I have to say also a little bit easier for us to monitor its performance and achievement.
Thank you. So thank you to all of our panellists, to Mary, to Rowena, to Lisa and to Laura. Thank you for your time. And I suppose just to sum up, we've heard from our panellists just, some of the opportunities that exist within policy, but there's also going to be new policy developed. You have the opportunity to lend your voice to that policy, whether it's through the Chambers of Commerce, whether it's through the Small Firms Association or through IBEC, or whatever means possible. I think the important thing, and everyone here, I'm sure on the panel would endorse this, use your voice as businesses to inform policy, because in policy it has to be informed, whether it's through EPA, through your research or SFI research. Policy is always informed, but it also needs to be informed by business. So please use your voice. So on that, thank you for your time today.
Brilliant.